Heart of Darkness, page 20. I strolled up. There was no hurry. You could see the thing had gone off like a box of matches. It had been hopeless from the very first. The flame had leaped high, driven everybody back, lighted up everything, and collapsed. The shed was already a heap of embers glowing fiercely. An African was being beaten nearby. They said he had caused the fire in some way. Be that as it may, he was screeching most horribly. I saw him, later, for several days, sitting in a bit of shade, looking very sick, and trying to recover himself. Afterwards he arose and went out, and the wilderness, without a sound, took him into its bosom again. As I approached the glow from the dark, I found myself at the back of two men talking. So number 36, the storage shed was set ablaze. Number 37, who's blamed for the storage shed? One of the Africans. Okay. As I approached the glow from the dark, I found myself at the back of two men talking. I heard the name of Kurtz pronounced, then the words, "Take advantage of his unfortunate accident." One of the men was the manager. I wished him a good evening. Did you ever see anything like it, eh? It is incredible, he said, and walked off. The other man remained. He was a first-class agent, young, gentlemanly, a bit reserved, with a forked little beard and a hooked nose. He was standoffish with the other agents, and they, on their side, said he was the manager's spy upon them. As to me, I'd hardly ever spoken to him before. We got into talk, and by we strolled away from the hissing ruins. Then he asked me to his room, which was in the main building of the station. He struck a match, and I perceived that this young aristocrat had not only a silver-mounted dressing case, but also a whole candle all to himself. Just at that time, the manager was the only man supposed to have any right to candles. Native mats covered the clay walls. A collection of spears, assegais, shields, knives was hung up in trophies. The business entrusted this fellow was the making of bricks. So I had been informed, but there wasn't a fragment of a brick anywhere in the station, and he had been there more than a year, waiting. Seems he could not make bricks without something. I don't know what. Straw, maybe. Anyway, it could not be found there, and as it was not likely to be sent from Europe, it did not appear clear to me what he was waiting for. An act of special creation, perhaps. However, they were all waiting, all the 16 or 20 pilgrims of them, for something, and upon my word, it did not seem an uncongenial occupation, from the way they took it, though the only thing that ever came to them was disease, as far as I could see. They beguiled the time by backbiting and intriguing against each other in a foolish kind of way. There was an air of plotting about that station, but nothing came of it, of course. It was unreal as everything else, as the philanthropic pretense of the whole concern, as their talk, as their government, as their show of work. The only real feeling was a desire to get appointed to a trading post where ivory was to be had, so that they could earn percentages. They intrigued and slandered and hated each other only on that account. But as to effectually lifting a little finger, no. By heavens, there is something after all in the world, allowing one man to steal a horse while another must not look at a halter. Steal a horse straight out. Very well, he had done it. Perhaps he can ride. But there is a way of looking at a halter that would provoke the most charitable of saints into a kick. All right, so number 38, he gets in this conversation with the manager's spy. And number 38 asks, what is the special privilege of the manager's spy? He has a whole candle all to himself, which is a hot commodity. And what is supposed to be the job of the spy? He's supposed to be a brickmaker, number 39, but no bricks have been made in more than a year. So clearly that is a falsehood. All right. I had no idea why he suddenly wanted to be sociable, but as we chatted in there, it suddenly occurred to me the fellow was trying to get at something. In fact, pumping me, like pumping him for information. He alluded constantly to Europe, to the people I was supposed to know there, putting on leading questions as to my acquaintances in the sepulchral city, and so on. His little eyes glittered like mica discs with curiosity, though he tried to keep up a bit of superciliousness. At first I was astonished, but very soon I became awfully curious to see what he would find out from me. I couldn't possibly imagine what I had in me to make it worth his while. It was very pretty to see how he had baffled himself, for in truth my body was full of only chills, and my head had nothing in it but that wretched steamboat business. It was evident he took me for a perfectly shameless prevaricator. At last he got angry, and to conceal a movement of furious annoyance, he yawned. I rose. Then I noticed a small sketch of oils on a panel representing a woman, draped and blindfolded, carrying a lighted torch. The background was somber, almost black. The movement of the woman was stately, and the effect of the torchlight on the face was sinister. All right, so number 40, describe the painting in the spy's room. It is a painting of a blindfolded woman. It arrested me, and he stood by it civilly, holding an empty half-pint champagne bottle, medical comforts, with a candle stuck in it. To my question, he said Mr. Kurtz had painted this in this very station more than a year ago, while waiting for means to go to his trading post. Tell me, pray, said I, who is this Mr. Kurtz? The chief of the inner station, he answered in a short tone, looking away. Much obliged, I said, laughing. And you are the brickmaker of the central station. Everyone knows that. He was silent for a while. He is a prodigy, he said at last. He is an emissary of pity and science and progress and devil knows what else. We want, he began to declaim suddenly, for the guidance of the cause entrusted to us by Europe, so to speak, higher intelligence, wide sympathies, a singleness of purpose. Who says that, I asked. Lots of them, he replied. Some even write that, and so he comes here, a special being, as you ought to know. Why ought I to know, I interrupted, really surprised. He paid no attention. Yes, today he is chief of the best station. Next year he will be assistant manager, 2 years more, but I dare say you know what he'll be in 2 years' time. You are of the new gang, the gang of virtue. The same people who sent him specially also recommended you. Oh, don't say so. I've my own eyes to trust. Light dawned on me. My dear aunt's influential acquaintances were producing an unexpected effect upon that young man. I nearly burst into a laugh. Do you read the company's confidential correspondence? I asked. He hadn't a word to say. It was great fun. When Mr. Kurtz, I continued severely, is general manager, you won't have the opportunity. Okay, so he's found out that this guy, this brickmaker, has been reading all the mail and all the stuff his aunt said about him, about how he was a great person to get him the job. This guy thinks is true, and that he's on the new management of the company thinks he's hot stuff. Okay, number 41. What is the spy's opinion of Kurtz? That he's a prodigy, and one day he'll be super high in the company. Number 41, he's a prodigy. A prodigy is somebody who's super gifted at something, in this case, getting ivory. Number 42, what is the spy's opinion of Marlowe? He thinks that Marlowe is more powerful than he actually is. And number 43, how does Marlowe take advantage of the spy's opinion? He just lets the spy think that Marlowe is super important. Like, he just allows him to believe whatever he wants to about Marlowe. Like, hey, he's passing off as like super high up in the company. Okay. He blew the candle out suddenly, and we went outside. The moon had risen. Black figures strolled about listlessly, pouring water on the glow, whence proceeded a sound of hissing. Steam ascended in the moonlight, and the beaten man groaned somewhere. What a row the brute makes, some indefatigable man with the mustaches appearing near us. Serve him right. Transgression, punishment, bang. Pitiless, pitiless. That's the only way. This will prevent all conflagrations for the future. I was just telling the manager. He noticed my companion and became crestfallen all at once. Not in bed yet, he said, with a kind of servile heartiness. It's so natural. Ha! Danger. Agitation. He vanished. I went to the riverside, and the other followed me. I heard a scathing murmur in my ear. Heaps of muffs. Go to. The pilgrims could be seen in knots, gesticulating, discussing. Several still had their staves in their hands. I verily believe they took these sticks to bed with them. Beyond the fence, the forest stood up spectrally in the moonlight, and through the dim stir, through the faint sounds of that lamentable courtyard, the silence of the land went home to one's very heart, its mystery, its greatness, the amazing reality of its concealed life. The hurt man moaned feebly somewhere nearby, then fetched a deep sigh that made me mend my pace away from there. I felt a hand introducing itself under my arm. My dear sir, said the fellow, I don't want to be misunderstood, and especially by you, who will see Mr. Kurtz long before I can have that pleasure. I wouldn't like him to get a false idea of my disposition. I let him run on, this papier-mâché Mephistopheles, and it seemed to me that if I tried, I could poke my forefinger through him and would find nothing inside but a little loose dirt, maybe. He, don't you see, had been planning to be assistant manager by and by under the present man, and I could see that the coming of Kurtz had upset them both, not a little. He talked precipitately, and I did not try to stop him. I had my shoulders against the wreck of my steamer, hauled up on the slope like a carcass of some big river animal. The smell of mud, of primeval mud, by Jove, was in my nostrils. The high stillness of primeval forest was before my eyes. There were shiny patches on the black creek. And the moon had spread over everything a thin layer of silver. Listen to this beautiful imagery. This is why I really like this book. The moon had spread over everything a thin layer of silver, over the rank grass, over the mud, over the wall, upon the wall of matted vegetation standing higher than the wall of a temple. Over the great river, I could see through a somber gap, glittering as it flowed broadly by without a murmur. All this was great, expectant, mute, while the man jabbered about himself. I wondered whether the stillness on the face of the immensity looking at us too